also looking at what's my typical length of stay and what's my typical booking window. And all of those are good data points. And then it's just testing certain things to make your best educated guess, quite frankly, and test it. What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host,
Emmanuel Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emmanuel Pani. What is up, E?
My brother, so good to see you. Man, Christmas is around the corner. I can't believe it. I don't even know how this happened. You know what I mean? I feel like it was yesterday that we were recording, how to set your goals for 2022. And I'm now I need to do Christmas shopping. And I'm just you know, but life is good, man. The villas are getting painted. I really appreciate all the people that gave us the feedback when we asked for it on IG. So we did go with the more courageous kind of blue. I went there as they were applying the first coat. Not gonna lie.
Oh, panic attack?
Mild panic attack has kind of set in. But I'm gonna trust the process and see what happens. And yeah, but everything looks pretty. And the lights are up. I got a bunch of Schlag encodes from Minoan in 2.5, 3 days.
Damn.
Saved myself $2,700. So if you guys are looking to buy in bulk, go see our friends at Minoan because they really hooked it up and it got here so fast. Whereas everywhere else I was looking was a couple weeks out. Remote Lock was telling me into January 2023. Went on Minoan, they have somebody on their platform, had the locks that I wanted ready 3 days later.
You buy it directly from Schlag through their site, or how does?
No, you buy it through one of their vendors that they have.
Okay, cool.
Through there, yeah. But it was excellent. And they're all already there. We're getting them all installed right now, so it's
nice, dude.
Yeah, it's a big step, but we're super excited. How are you guys?
We're good, man. We're good. Getting excited. We're closing a week from today, so really, by the time this podcast comes out, in a few days, we'll be closing on our biggest hotel yet. So just had a meeting with marketing company around branding and positioning and all that stuff, which was good. And yeah, man, I'm excited. And I just got back from Scottsdale, went to a mastermind event that I'm a part of. And dude, it's just when you get in the room with people that are just savage, it just levels your game up, Mm-hmm. And I ticked off a couple bucket list items. I got to meet Patrick Bet-David and have a conversation with him. If you guys don't follow him, dude,
yeah,
he's such an amazing dude.
Yeah.
And then I got to meet Dean Graciosi, who I've followed him forever,
Yeah.
Now he's Tony Robbins CEO. I mean, he's got so much stuff going on. Just great dude, amazing energy. And then all the other people at the mastermind, and got some other investing opportunities now lined up, which I'm pretty stoked for, and some partnerships that'll be coming. So it's good stuff, man. If you're not doing it now, get to the events, join the masterminds, go to the events, do all those things. Cause we've said it a million times, your network is your cheat code. It really is. So
100%.
And so speaking of connections and cheat codes, we've got a pretty sweet guest on the podcast today. Someone that I've known now for a few years and has really helped me, up my game from a pricing standpoint. We've got Anurag Verma today, the co-founder and head of data science and product. I want to make sure I got that right, to join us to talk about what's going on, all the pricing and these algorithm changes, and how do we diagnose listings and all sorts of good stuff. So welcome to the show, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Glad to be here. Thank Emmanuel as well.
Yeah. Well, maybe I know we've had you on the show before, but for the folks that haven't heard that episode, you want to give us kind of like the
Yeah,
60-second cliff notes on your background and how you got into PriceLabs?
absolutely. I think I was on maybe like 2 years back at this point. So it's been a while. Uh, yeah, so I had a background in not short-term rental pricing, airline pricing at United Airlines in Chicago. And this is back in like 2014, where one of my now co-founders, then friends, started hosting, and he's like, uh, Airbnb isn't telling me anything about like how do I set prices, what's the market looking like, uh, and even the little that I can find, like how do I go about changing it by season, events, holidays, and all those things. And this was sort of my bread and butter at United, like building this stuff up. So generally got together and thought, okay, let's do something. That's how PriceLabs got started. So I've been at it, hacking away at it for 8 years now. It's been good fun. Met a lot of cool people, you guys included. So yeah, it's been a journey of figuring out uh, what short-term rentals are about. When we started out, it was Airbnb, to us at least.
Mm.
And when we dipped our toes in, we realized that no, Airbnb is sort of one piece here. There is so much more to this industry, and it's been a fun journey.
Yeah. And Anurag's kind of like one of those like humble people that's brilliant. And so I like to chat with him and then I can like dumb it down for myself to like consume the information because he's just one of those dudes that's super smart. And if you guys don't use Price Labs, highly encourage it. We've been using them for years. And if you're not, like, you're losing money, quite frankly. And so one of the things that we were talking about that we really wanted to focus on this episode is, kind of what's going on with the market. And, you guys have access to tons of data from all the different users. So I want to start first with like, what are you seeing? Like overall, we'll focus on the US first, and then we can go a little bit broader than that. But like
Yep.
US right now, what are you guys seeing
Yeah.
as far as like booking patterns and things?
Yeah. So generally speaking, in the last few months, we are seeing a slowdown year over year in pretty much every US market, I would say, except the really big cities. So cities where business was one of the big reasons for travel uh, are still doing okay. And I looked at Chicago right before this call, and Chicago seems to be doing just as good as, like, November was as good as November of 2021. Uh, Depending again on like what kind of traffic do you get, right? Where we are seeing a lot of slowdown is very leisure locations that typically attract leisure travel. Part of it could just be that 2021 was such a blockbuster year for such locations that even a normal 2022 would look bad. But especially like I think in the last few months with recession fears and things like that, we are seeing slowdown. What we are also seeing for a lot of markets is if you just purely look at your forward-looking calendar and compare it to how it used to look last year, it will look like it's terrible because what's happening is, and this happens anytime there is a slowdown, people tend to book last minute. So December right now is looking in a lot of locations much worse than last year. But by the time December finishes, it may not look as bad in terms of occupancies. What does happen is when people book last minute, they also get sort of last minute deals and discounts and things like that. So ADRs and occupancy are both coming down as a result.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking about that on our mastermind coaching call last night. One of my members has a bunch of really high-end properties in the Smokies, and he was noticing the same thing. Typically, there's a longer booking window, like people book further in advance because they're planning. And he was kind of freaking out because he's like, "Man, I don't have any of these properties booked like this weekend." And then all of a sudden, like super last minute, all of them went, right? Like very last minute. So
yeah, I had somebody text me the other day, similar story. He was like, newer host, just been in our market for like the last year and a half. She listens to the show and she's like, "Hey, just a question for you. Is this normal?" And I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, I'm like, you gotta develop what I have learned from a friend that used to work in Wall Street is what they're called diamond hands. And what diamond hands are is you gotta wait to the very last minute to adjust pricing. And it's what happens with with the traders when they have the stock going up and down and not selling in a panic. And so this is what's happening now, right? So you start seeing people panicking, people not knowing. And the funny thing that it's happening everywhere, and there's so many different little variables that are part of it, that this is why we wanted to have you on the show, because I think people are really freaking out, trying to understand the right lever for them to like adjust or pull down or raise up to go back to 2021 occupancy. And I personally think it's just, you guys just got to get over it. And it's just, it is what it is now. Like it's a different.
I'm assuming, Anurag, that in my opinion, you've got the data to back it up, but like 2021 was like record year. Like you could just print money in 2021. Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah, for a lot of locations. Yeah.
And now it's just kind of starting to normalize again. And I think a lot of people are assuming that that's directly caused by this recession. And part of it is, but I also think part of it is just normalizing the travel patterns, because everybody was traveling like crazy last year. And they're like, you know what? I don't have to go to a drive-to destination now. Maybe I want to fly over somewhere else, or maybe I want to go to Europe, and there's not all this fear around COVID anymore.
True. Yeah. So, I mean, two things, right? One is last year, a lot of schools were still remote. So you could actually go live somewhere else, work from there, school from there, and do things like that. And this year, more or less, I mean, I don't know many schools that are still remote. Everybody is in. So like most people are staying where their kids are going to school, right? Some lucky people don't have kids and they can go to whatever, which is great. But and then second is just like you mentioned, international travel like wasn't happening as much before, and now things have opened up in pretty much every other place. So like US seems like it's come back to normalcy, maybe a little down. Europe is actually year over year doing fine, like nothing showing there. And there are locations in like APAC where even late last year was there were COVID scares and lockdowns, and if you compare them year over year, they are like just through the roof in some cases, right? Depending on where the lockdowns were and were. So like it also year over year comparisons really, what you're comparing against what was happening last year is very important to look at as well. I will say on the pricing side, there are two pieces to it. So like one, if last year you were holding your prices high and getting booked, and this year you have the same prices, it's possible that given that the demand is softer, nobody will book, and then at some point you panic and you reduce them a lot. What we have had to do in our algorithm is sort of, by noticing that there is a slowdown, proactively don't bring them down all the way, but proactively bring them down to say, okay, if somebody is looking, my property needs to be a little more attractive. So
100%.
The thought is it's okay to book a month out, 2 months out, 3 months out, and there be a 5% discount, maybe like bump them down, than to book a week out or 2 days out with a 20% last minute discount.
So like, and I love that you brought that up, because actually I was looking at our pricing, and last year, if I compare it to 2020 numbers, we were up like 40 to 45%, especially on our peak season. This year, knowing kind of silly, and the beauty for me, and what I'm so grateful about being part of this show and being part of this industry, is that for me I keep my ear on the ground a lot more than I probably would if I wasn't involved in our show, in our community. And so seeing that kind of trend already happening, and Mike and I had this conversation, because if you're a fan of the show, you've known that this was happening 6 months ago, right? Mike, when did we start talking about this? 6, 7, 8 months ago. So if you come and tell us all of a sudden our prices are dropping, listen, Papi, like you weren't paying attention, right? So like you needed to pay more attention, and you can't be in this like wishful thinking kind of world, which is very nice. But then when the bills come and you don't have anybody in your house, it's a problem, right? So our prices are now like 25 to 30% higher than they were 2020. So again, higher year over year from 2020, just not 2021 numbers. But again, that wasn't sustainable. And going back to what you're saying, international travel is back. The euro is super cheap now. So if you have the money, why wouldn't you go to Europe where you can live a higher quality life, in my opinion, as an
You're
Italian,
biased. You're biased.
a higher quality life, better food, better people, better like thing for cheaper, right? Also, the World Cup happened this year. So how many people that would have normally traveled around the world are now just going to a specific place for a specific time, and they were willing to sacrifice maybe months of travels that they would have done throughout the summer to go to the World Cup, right? Like there's a lot of, in this global world, it's fun, but it's also global when it's not fun. Meaning like when the things change and the trends change, they change for all of us at the same time.
Yeah. From a tactical standpoint, right? So a lot of people, they're like, you know, I had a call with somebody yesterday. They're like, yeah, but like my occupancy was 100% last year. In my head, I'm like, well, you probably weren't charging enough if you were completely booked. But, or it's like always this discussion of like, what's better, a higher nightly rate or a higher occupancy? And what I encourage everybody to do is calculate your RevPAR, right? So all that means is take your total revenue for the month and divide it by the number of days in the month. And that will show you how much you actually make every day. And that's one of the key metrics that we track, because then I can really see, okay, this property made me $130 a day last month or last year compared to $120 a day this year, right? So like it's kind of the great equalizer of like managing occupancy versus nightly rates. And that's what the hotels do. Like they target that 60 to 65% occupancy to maximize their RevPAR.
Yeah. And then again, different places have different occupancies that might work for them, but the RevPAR is the right metric. You can bump up your rates 20% and then get half the bookings you used to. And although they have been like 20% higher in price, you've now made 60% of what you made last year, right? So like targeting higher price is not the right thing. Or you could drop your rates by 50% and be fully booked. And again, in both cases, you've made less money than before. So like, why do something like that, right?
Yeah. And do you guys see because to me also the dropping pricing is a very dangerous kind of game for a couple of reasons, right? One, in my mind, if I see something that is a certain size especially, and it's priced so aggressively low, let me give you an example, right? A 4-bedroom house for $175 a night, where everything else that I'm looking at, it's like $350, $425, $450, $500. My thought as a traveler, and this is why you have to understand like your travel avatar and understand psychology of the consumer. It's not like what a great deal this is. I'm like, what's wrong with this? Right?
Yeah.
So it's the opposite. So you're slashing prices, you keep slashing prices, but you know who is not gonna think there is anything wrong with it? People that want to mess your stuff up. People that want to go for a party. People that are a big group of people. They're like a bunch of friends or younger people. They're like, this is a great deal.
Yeah.
And so you hurt yourself twice technically by not understanding that there's more to life than price. And the value proposition of price is not always the thing that you need to fix. And one, you get less bookings because the price is too low. And two, the bookings that you do get, you didn't want anyways.
That's
now
a big psychological thing. Yeah.
Right. And it's such an interesting thing because like as newbies, I think as you look at the things that makes the most amount of sense, you always go to pricing as the first thing that you're going to drop. Whereas there's so many different things that factor into your pricing that maybe are more important, which I think brings us to one of the next questions we had, which was the change with Airbnb and this cleaning fee that has everybody freaking out, which I don't understand because I'm like, as a traveler that uses Airbnb, that cleaning fee was always there at the end before I booked. So I'm like, I don't understand this revolutionary thing that's happening because it was always there. I'm like, it wasn't a secret. Like I wasn't keeping it a secret. I don't know if other people have other settings on their Airbnb, but it's like, it was there. So is that making a difference? How should people act with that?
I think it was there, but it was a system earlier that you could game in some ways, right? Where you could keep the nightly rates low and then cleaning fee high. And I know people do that also because it helps encourage longer bookings. Like some people have a higher cleaning fee just so that, I don't want a one night stay. I'll take it. But if somebody really wants to book a one night stay, the cleaning fee is so high that nobody's going to. Only when you book a 3-4 night, then it makes sense. So some people were using it that way. And some people were using it potentially using it in a very different way, right? Where having a lower nightly rate when you're looking at 10 properties and one of them is showing $300, another is showing $400. And you might say, okay, let me check out the $300 one more first. I might check out everything, but you can only look at one listing's detail. And by the time you go to the page, you realize the cleaning fee is very high. But I think some people at least were hoping that by the time you look at it, you're like, oh, the pictures are lovely, everything is great. Sure, the cleaning fee is high, I'll go book it. With this change, it seems like the most sensible thing to do, to say how much are you going to pay in total, just put it up. I think they're not doing taxes right now, which seems strange. They should just add taxes in there as well. But now, if you have a high cleaning fee, and because of that, if your rate is going too high, somebody might not, out of the 10 that they see in their first page, they might not click on you. And so that might be the thing that's changed. Although the new thing is completely sensible, in my opinion, at least.
Show me the actual price of what this is actually going to cost me. Like, logically, that makes sense to me as a consumer. I'm like, just clear the BS. How much is it going to cost me?
Yeah, I don't care. But like, that's the thing that I don't understand is like, if it was there, and I think the people that maybe should worry about were the people that you were saying at the beginning, right? That they were using it as an excuse to make extra money.
My opinion, okay, and this is not based on any fact, okay, but my opinion is that what Brian Chesky and all the C-suites at Airbnb are trying to do is they're trying to align themselves more with hotels and how people book hotels, because you're not seeing cleaning fees on hotels. So I think they're trying to incentivize people to just make it a similar buying experience from like the consumer side at the beginning of like, all right, dude, just tell me what it costs. And even the hotels, most of the time, they don't include the taxes. So I think that's why they're trying to mimic how people book hotels. That's just my thought.
There are two other examples if they want to mimic that go even farther, I think are better. Flights. It used to be 10 years back when you book a flight that you see the base price and then all kinds of things get added. I think in the last 5 years, I have not seen that happen. Like every single place shows you the final price. Only when you're about to pay will they give you a breakdown to say, this is the tax, this is whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't care about like what that breakdown is. I'm paying this price. Who it goes to at the end is not as important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of my coworkers, Tabo from, he's based out of Netherlands. He mentioned in his blog that Airbnb has been doing this, including taxes, in Europe for a few years now. So because European laws require it, like you can't not include some part of the final price in what you show.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the biggest shockers always of Europeans coming here. Like I remember when I came to live in the States, I would go out with money and I would see something cost how much money it was. And then I would go to the cash register. And they're like, there's tax. I'm like, why is that not? Why is that not on the price? And they're like, that's not how it works here. I'm like, why not? You know what I mean? And it's just like, but it's true. And I think, again, guys, I think as our industry grows more and more, there's going to be less space for people that want to do things not properly and less space for people that are just in it for the money grab. And again, if you're somebody like me, the Airbnb thing doesn't mean anything to me because it was never in my intention to ever deceive our guests in any way, shape, or form. So everything was always there. But it's the same way, like I don't ever make any money from my cleaning people. Like that's just not something that like I'm interested in. Would it be nice? Maybe, but it's just not, it don't mean nothing to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like the little money that you make. And again, like you see it here now, like look at all the business, that explosion that we had. A lot of people not doing cleaning fees properly or charging outrageous cleaning fees. Like I've seen people in my market charging like $350, $400, $450 for something that like we get clean for like $100. And I'm like, what is the point? Right? You know? So
Um,
what's coming down the pipeline? Like, what do you see changing? I know you said year over year. That's a new features that you guys have, right? So is there a new way now that we can go into Price Labs and see like this is how glorious we were last year and this is how terrible we are this year? Or
so this is not just historic looking, but so what we're adding is something. What we added yesterday is something called pacing charts. Pacing, if you think of hotel industry, it's very standard there. Pacing essentially tells you, like the name suggests, how fast are you going, essentially. And it's more forward looking than historic looking. So year over year comparisons a lot of times are like, okay, I want to compare how my summer of 2022 was against 2021. And that helps you maybe figure out what went wrong, what went right, and maybe make changes for 2023, right? But it's data that's backward looking. Pacing is more, I would say, proactive data where you're looking forward. So for example, very soon for a lot of locations, January is when people start booking their summer vacation, right? And if you use PriceLabs, for example, and even if you don't use us for dynamic pricing, you can still see this data. What you can see is, okay, January, by the time January rolls in, summer was beginning to book up last year, and maybe August was 10% booked. And this year, it's only 5% booked. So it gives you a sense of whether it gives you a sense of the public sentiment in some ways to say, is the market down? Am I down? And maybe you see that the market isn't down, but I am. And if it is August, maybe not as much to worry about. But sitting today in December, if I'm looking at my Christmas and New Year's, and I can see that everybody has this thing, right? Like, hey, I'm not booked for, not everybody. Some people don't get booked for Christmas, and they're like, hey, half my portfolio is still not booked for Christmas. Should I be panicking? It's to answer that question to say, one, were you booked for Christmas? How much were you booked for Christmas last year at this point of time? Maybe you were like 90% booked eventually, but by December 7th, maybe you were half of the properties were empty and they got booked last minute. So maybe it's okay. Maybe you're pacing way down, but then you can also see the market to say, is it my properties? Is it my ranking? Is it my prices? Or is it the market softness? And the answer to what you do might depend on these questions to say, if the market is down and you're down, then your answer is different. If the market is holding up and you're down, that means it might be either your
It's you.
Look in the mirror.
It's you.
You can say it. Yeah, it's all you. Like, you're the only one going to. No, I'm joking, but like it makes sense. And again, guys, like it's so funny because when we started this business, this was not a thing, right? Like, this was never something that was even accessible for you to know. You know what I mean? And like, you had the like old ways of knowing things, right? It's just like, I know from experience of doing this for like 12 years that around this time I will get X amount of phone calls, and I know that I don't have them, right? And I can hear on the phone, you know what I mean? And also, like, it makes a difference too for my South Florida people, for the like warm weather places as well. It always makes me laugh because whenever the big first cold front happens in the Northeast, that's usually when I get a bunch of phone calls. And anytime there's really cold weather in the Northeast, couple consecutive days, or like a snow blizzard or like power, you get people calling, right? And so it's a normal kind of trend of life. But again, like, it just helps you be educated as to what to do. And then going back to like having diamond hands, if the market is slow and your listings are slow, that is the time that you may want to hold on 1 second and see what's happening, especially if you have, you know, the ability to do so. Whereas the market is good and your listings are soft, maybe it's not the time to be proud and have diamond hands and not lower your prices because the market is telling you you're priced too high.
It could be prices. It could be maybe your
Probably your listing.
your listing is down for some reason. Either the hopefully hopefully you haven't degraded your pictures from last year to this year. Everybody hopefully is improving them, but maybe something else is off. Maybe you got a couple of bad reviews and the ranking tanked, or maybe you didn't even change anything, but the ranking tanked, and maybe you should change something to get it back up, or things like that. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you, and we did talk offline about this, but I've seen some people start to test this, and some of our mastermind members have been testing this around, will I get a boost on Airbnb specifically on their algorithm if I drastically reduce my cleaning fee, but then accordingly, if I know that my average stay is 3 nights or 2 nights, 3 days, whatever, then I just increase my average nightly rate by that percentage, right? And I've seen mixed things on that so far. Some of them it worked really well and it got them up there on like page 1 and started to get bookings, and sometimes it just kind of had a slight improvement. So I don't know if you guys have seen that trend or if you've noticed anything.
Haven't really noticed anything on this front, except that we have also gotten questions about it on whether to do it or not. My advice in these cases has been, if you do that, if you reduce your cleaning fee to something that's below your actual cleaning fee, then when you have a one night stay that shows up, then you're effectively going to get, if you reduce reduce cleaning fee and increase prices with a 3 night stay in mind, then your 1 and 2 nighters become a little cheaper. And maybe that's what's happening. Like when people search, you're getting more of the 1 and 2 night stays, but then even getting those bookings may boost your rank up, or something like that is happening. But on the longer nights, you're now getting more expensive, right? Like if somebody is looking to book a 6 night, 7 night stay, you're potentially more expensive than you used to. So need to be a little careful about that as well, especially if you take a lot of longer bookings. Of course, there are solutions in Airbnb to account for that, right? You can, if you're increasing your nightly rate, you can reduce or increase your weekly discounts or monthly discounts as well, and to counter that.
I think that's why it's important too. Like again, treating this like a business, you got to know your numbers, right? So again, we talked about RevPAR and all that stuff earlier. Also looking at what's my typical length of stay and what's my typical booking window, and all of those are good data points. And then it's just testing certain things to make your best educated guess, quite frankly, and test it.
Yeah, and the ranking one is so if somebody is saying that their rank has gotten down on Airbnb, that could be so many other things, and if changing some settings brings it back, it may not be that the settings were in the right direction, just that sometimes when you change things in Airbnb, it thinks you're an active host and thumbs you up. So it's so hard to answer without really knowing what Airbnb does for ranking. I wish sometimes there was a little more transparency, but maybe if there was transparency, then it would be gamed a lot more, right? So like that's why they don't.
Yeah, there's always going to be people that try to game the system. So.
What I have, like in slow times, one of the things that we do see is more people book last minute. So you have to be like very on point with last minute prices. But also that might be a time when you think of that, okay, if I get a monthly stay, I should take it. Anytime in going back to the RevPAR thing, if your average January nets 20 book nights at about $100, you're making $2,000 out of that, right? And if you can get those $2,000 from 1 month stay, maybe that is okay. You're giving a big 30% or 33% discount to somebody who's booking a 1 month stay, but far lesser headache. One single person, and somebody who's booking for a month is not there to like party and crash your place. Yeah. So
midterm stays have been a hot topic of the last couple months.
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
Actually, Bigger Pockets just released a book. We should have that girl on here, because I would love to pick her brain, because I've always loved those. Like I think at 30-day stay, for me, I'll take a 30-day stay over a week most times, because again, like the rate is a little bit lower, but when you know your numbers and knowing how much of your month is usually occupied,
Yeah.
chances are that it's not that much less. And when you factor in your reducing cleaning costs, turnover costs, and everything else, you're actually probably almost better off taking that 1 month stay. And then those people that stay for a month, especially in our markets, like they will come back. Like somebody that stays a month, chances are that they're coming back to visit family, to visit friends, or they have other people in their ecosystem that come back. Like I have a lot of like corporate clients. That's how we met them. Like one person came for a month, and then every time they have somebody coming in, that they just keep coming back.
That is, I will put a shameless plug for a book we are co-authoring.
Hey,
Oh, hey.
look at that.
Which is
I'm
very
glad you said that because I never put 2 and 2 together because I just see Mark's bright bald head everywhere promoting it, and I never see you on it. So I'm glad that you brought it up.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
so
love that.
Mark had the first version, and for the second version, it does a little bit of deeper dive. So like there are various people from different companies that specialize in something. So like we wrote a chapter that's more about pricing for direct bookings. And Emmanuel, I don't know how you do this, but this is a story we hear often, especially for direct bookings, where like somebody stays for a month. At this point, they kind of get to know you, or you can make sure that they get to know you. And when they're booking the next time, they don't have to book through Airbnb. You can give them, if you have a direct booking website, you can tell them, hey, just go book there. And I think at least our chapter talks about, okay, now how should you set prices on your direct booking website? Because now that Airbnb's OTA fees is not there, should you keep it to yourselves? Should you share it with the guest? How do you figure out costs? Because managing a direct booking website is not free in some ways, right? So like figuring those answers out.
And that's a huge conversation also that I was having with Ryan when he came from Dubai, because he built up a huge booking website for his clients there, and he's now charging an OTA fee on direct bookings because it's like, look, I built it. They're coming for my stuff that I built, and your stuff is listed on my shop technically, right? So it's people are coming for it, right? And again, like I love that you brought up the fact that so by the way, guys, if you guys don't watch this, he was holding up the new book, the Book Direct book
Blueprint,
and Mark Simpson, the Book Direct Blueprint, which is coming out. It's already out. It's coming out.
It's coming out next week.
Okay.
In a week.
Yeah. Awesome. So like by the time this show airs, it'll be out. You guys should definitely go get it. Because again, like I learn always from Mark Simpson in all ways, shape, and forms. And the fact that all of you guys have wrote your own individual little like chapters in there, I feel is going to be super valuable. But again, guys, the goal is to move people off other people's platforms. And especially if you have a management company and you're looking, or a co-hosting company, it's such a great selling proposition for you to have. The fact that you have a way and a system to convert OTA bookers into direct bookers and do that for your clients, because you're going to make them more money, but then you should also charge them.
Also, you de-risk a little bit, right? So if you're only on Airbnb, and this is first thing I tell pretty much everybody who asks, if you're only on Airbnb, at least go list on Verbo and Booking.com, because Airbnb might make a change that impacts SEO, say the cleaning fee change, which we think shouldn't impact anything, but maybe it does. At least you get to know that, okay, I still have consistency in the other two OTAs, like a smaller portion of your business is impacted. And then if you also have a direct booking website, and if you get a lot of repeat guests, you don't even have to market it much, right? You just have to make sure that whoever stays gets to know about your direct website, and they like you enough to come back to it, or your place enough to come back to it. But all of that helps as you grow your business in not having single points of failure, essentially. To say Airbnb did something and then I suddenly have no income. At least you should have some part of the income coming in from other sources.
Yep, 100%. So, well, before we get into the last question, Anurag, thank you again for coming on here. Always enjoy catching up with you and learning from you and all the good stuff that PriceLabs does. So for folks that are interested in PriceLabs, if you don't know who they are, I don't know where you've been. You clearly haven't been listening to this show for a while, but where can folks learn more about PriceLabs and connect with you guys?
Yeah, so our website is pricelabs.co. And you can email us at support@pricelabs.co, and we'll give you the right pointers. If you go to our website, we do daily live trainings for customers, prospective customers, to just figure out, okay, is this something that I want to get into and I want to use? One thing I will say is, even if you don't want to use dynamic pricing for whatever reason, or what you can do is you can still connect your properties, and we have these dashboards that are free that will show your own portfolios year-over-year performance and things like that. That just help you get a sense of like the kind of questions that we went through, right? Like, okay, should I panic that December end is not booked yet 100%? And yeah, for your own portfolio, you can see all of that for free. If you want to add market data, that there is a $10 fee for that. But then you can start answering a lot of questions, even if you say, hey, dynamic pricing is not something for me. We tend to say that revenue management and dynamic pricing, even if you don't, you can control it. Like, it's not, Wild West where you turn on a switch and it does its thing. You can set parameters. You can say how you want your minimum nights to be longer far out and shorter close in, and when there are gaps, fill them in, and those kinds of things. But even if all of that is not for you, you just want to look at data, that your own data, you can see some pretty good looking informative reports for free on PriceLabs.
That's awesome. I think Julie George talks about she didn't use dynamic pricing. I think over her properties, I think she left on the table like close to $1 million.
Yeah.
So it may not be for you guys.
I don't care. It's for you.
It is for you. Like, it is like,
if you're not doing it,
it's not for me. It's just like, it is for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, think about like E and Mike on your shoulders, and like there's a little devil and a little angel. Both of us are telling you the same thing right now. You're just like, it is.
I'm wearing black today, so I'm assuming I'm the devil. I don't know, but
yeah, obviously
he's white.
Yeah,
so, right.
that was obviously.
we teed that analogy up purposefully with our wardrobe today.
Yeah.
But I know we asked you this last time, so I'm curious if it's going to change. But what would you say is your number one secret to success with short-term rentals?
Number one secret to success in short-term rentals?
Yeah.
For somebody who's operating short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Number one is hard. I can give you 3.
Okay. Over deliver every time. This guy.
No, I think number one, like, you need to have something that people want, right? So like, you need to have properties that people would want to book. Either it's in form of location, or it's in the form of some amenities, or whatever it is. Number 2 is you need to make sure that you put it at places where people can get to it. We talked a lot about book direct, but OTAs have a place. Like, that's how people discover your place. So make sure you put it up there, and put it up there well. Like, your pictures need to be on top. All the amenities need to be listed properly. And then 3, this is a shameless plug again, like, they need to be priced well. So like, if somebody is looking for a stay, they need to be priced well, and the availabilities need to be synced up perfectly across OTAs, and minimum stay settings need to be fine. So like, if somebody's coming for a 2-night stay, and you have that 2-night stay available, and you want to book a 2-night stay, make sure people can book it at a reasonable price, and that's how any business works, right? Like, have a product, make sure it's advertised well, make sure it's priced well, and once all of this happens, of course, you need to service the guests and everything else. But if you're in hospitality, the hope is that that's something you're an expert at already.
Love it. Well, Anurag, thank you again so much for being here. Truly appreciate you coming on. And all you listeners out there, just go check them out, for Christ's sake. If you haven't done that yet, I don't know what you're waiting on. But
Yeah.
Again, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening, tuning in. Grab the book direct blueprint. That'll be out most likely by the time this airs. So that's it for this week, guys. Hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.